This is a John Deere 317 that I have for sale. Rather than just posting some pictures, I'm going to do a short video and explain some of the features of this tractor and also some of the repairs that I've done to it. I owned this tractor 20 years ago. I bought it from a John Deere dealer where I worked, and after about 4 or 5 years I sold it. A friend of mine also repairs John Deere tractors, and he told me, he says, "I think I found your tractor." And I said, no, that's impossible. No, this is my tractor that I owned 20 years ago, and at that time I restored it. Everything on this tractor, the paint is in very good condition. A 317 does have hydraulic couplers, and this has 2 sets, so you can put a like a front blade on here, and you can raise and lower the blade, and you can also adjust the angle. So having 2 sets of couplers, I actually had a loader on this tractor, and it worked pretty good for a loader. Okay, the tractor has a Kohler engine, and when I started working on this tractor, had some fuel problems, so I rebuilt the carburetor and did quite a few things to the tractor. It's going to have a 48-inch deck, and the spindle bearings have been replaced, and the drive belt to the mower deck has also been replaced. There is a deck belt which is in good condition, so since it has new blades and new belt, it's going to last for quite a while. As far as the overall cosmetics, there really aren't any rust spots. There are no rust spots. There might be a few chips in the paint, which looks like somebody, after I sold it, took pretty good care of it. The seat is in good condition, and it is a older tractor, so most of the parts, anything that it did need, I went through the tractor, adjusted everything, and I'll be detailing a lot of the parts that I did change on this next. As far as the engine, this is a Kohler, and it's the older Series 1. It does not have an oil filter. One of the things is, on this engine, you're supposed to use only a straight 30-weight oil. This engine is a little older, so I went ahead and I'm using 40-weight, but you never want to use like a 10W30 in here. The owner's manual specifically says only use straight 30 or 40-weight oil. I cleaned the carburetor because it wasn't starting, and then I found out the reason it wasn't starting is the fuel pump was bad, so I put an electric fuel pump on it. The filter is on the side of the engine here, and when you look at this fuel filter, it doesn't look like there's any fuel in it. And I've never understood that, but the way this filter works, the fuel will go straight through the filter, and as it becomes clogged, you'll then see some more gas in it. Also, if there's any water, the water is going to be in the bottom here, so that might not be fuel, that might be just water in the bottom of the settlement filter here. Okay, after changing the filter and everything, we then decided we needed to take the tank off. The line going to the tank, you couldn't blow air through it, so we had to take the fender deck off. Eventually what we found out is there is a shutoff valve on the back of the tractor, and this on the inside here, you can shut it off. But we found out there's a little sediment filter on the inside of the tank, and it's a stainless steel mesh, and that was totally plugged. So we took the tank off, flushed it out, and I'm pretty sure you shouldn't have any fuel issues with this tractor anymore. Okay, the fuel cap on this has a little knob here where you can open and close the vent, and you just want to make sure that it's open. John Deere does sell a cap that has a float in the tank, and it has like a spiral rod that the float is going to turn the gauge on the outside here. There's a plastic cover. The only problem is, after a while, the gas is actually going to distort that clear plastic and you can't see it. So I bought those in the past and they didn't last. So this works, and the only thing is you just want to make sure that vent is open. If you're going to have any trouble, if you're going to have that closed, then the carburetor won't be able to draw gas from the fuel tank. I would recommend running 89 octane non-ethanol fuel. It probably would run fine with the regular ethanol fuel, but in all of my equipment, I always use the non-ethanol fuel, and this is available. I live down near Atlanta, and we have some stations, they're QT, Racetrack, where they actually have this, and you can buy the non-ethanol fuel. It's not just a specialty that only a few people have. Okay, I did install a new starter on the tractor and a new ignition switch. The starter isn't that expensive. The problem with it is you do need to pull the engine to replace the starter. But I did that. It has a brand new starter. The drive shaft from the engine to the hydro, I checked it, and it has a universal joint which is not lubricated. There's no grease zerk. There's sealed bearings, but those are good. In fact, I actually put that in there when I had previously owned it. The ignition switch is new, and that was just one of those other things that can cause problems. So I just went ahead and put a new switch in. There's a new battery. So as far as having problems with this, the ends here on the existing cables, I had to replace those with some new ones. But everything as far as the electrical is working good. All of the lights work. You have lights in the front and you have lights in the back, and all of the lights work. The PTO switch is right here, and that's what's going to turn the mower deck on and off. One of the things is you have to have this switch in the off position, or else you can't start the engine. They don't want you to be able to start the mower with the deck engaged. Also, you have to have it in neutral, and when you put it in neutral, there's a little switch that'll click. If you have a tractor that doesn't start, these are the first two things I would check. And you can actually just take your finger and go in here and operate that little switch. It's something that occasionally does go bad. If it doesn't start, that's where I would start, and then make sure that the PTO switch is off. This tractor does have dual brakes, which you have two pedals. One is for the right and the other is for the left wheel. If you're going along and you're getting stuck and your right wheel is spinning, what you do is you put a little pressure on this brake pedal, which is going to slow down the right wheel and allow the left wheel to grab. So this is on farm tractors. I grew up on a farm in the 50s and 60s, and all of our tractors had this. If you want to just use it as a brake, there's this little latch you can put where it's going to lock the two together, which when you put the parking brake on, it's going to then be connecting to both of the brakes. If you do it this way, it's only connecting, I think it's to the right one only, but I always just leave that on there so that whenever I hit it, I'm getting both brakes. Okay, the hydrostat is a hydraulic transmission, and this is where you would take this nut off and you can add hydraulic fluid. This here is a sight glass. It's not actually glass, it's a plastic tube. But what you want to do is you want to be able to see the liquid in here, and there it looks like it's a little down, but that's because I've got the tractor on a little bit of a hill, but you want to keep it about in the center there. You can use John Deere regular high guard in this transmission, or you can actually use Type F automatic transmission fluid. Type F is going to cost you, in most cases, a little more than what the John Deere fluid would cost, so I just always use the regular John Deere high guard in here. To drain the fluid, there is no drain plug on the hydro. Underneath there's a aluminum tube from the bottom going up, and they all actually say that that's a cooling tube. But you loosen the connector on the bottom of the hydro, and that's how you're going to be able to drain the fluid out of it. The hydrostat has a filter, and this is actually a Fram PH16. You can get the filter from John Deere, and they're about $10, but I cross-referenced the John Deere to this one, and here you can see the line that's going to the bottom of the hydro is the one that you're going to loosen up to drain it. I looked forever to try to find a drain plug on this, and eventually found out online that there is no drain plug. You just loosen up this tube. The hydrostat is actually a hydraulic pump which drives a hydraulic motor, and that's where you're going to be using that as far as your control lever. It's actually just being controlled, putting the hydraulic pressure to a hydraulic motor. Okay, you also have the couplers in the front, and these are the levers that are going to be operating your front couplers. The one on the outside on the left here is also going to raise and lower your mower deck. There's a cylinder in the back. It's called a rock shaft cylinder, and what that's going to do is operate the mower deck, lifting and lowering it, and it just has, this is down and this is up. The hydraulic couplers on the front correspond to this lever. So if I had a blade or some other attachment on the front, this one is going to be used typically to raise and lower the whatever the unit is. This one is going to be for the right-hand side of the tractor for those couplers. And this one has an additional feature. It's called float. When you push it all the way forward, it puts it in this position, which is going to remove either the raising or lowering pressure from the hydraulic cylinder. So if you had a blade and you were, plowing snow and you want that to just float, you would put it in this position. Here it's just raise and lower, float, you push it forward. On a lot of tractors that I bought, this lever works fine, no problem. This one raises and lowers the mower deck and gets used all the time. This lever, if you don't have any front attachments, what usually would happen is after a while this would just become stuck, and I'd have to get underneath and loosen up the spool to the this valve. And it's something that all you need to do is every once in a while just push this up and back, even if you don't have an attachment. That way if you ever do get one, it's going to be able to not have to be freed up, that it's locked. And down here there's a label that explains the functions, and there's the cutting height, and this is where this knob, you use it to adjust the cutting height of the mower. So this little decal has a lot of information which you should be familiar with. Parking brake, when you want to set the parking brake, you drop that lever. When you want to disconnect the parking brake, you lift it up and put it in that little notch. Okay, if you want to move the tractor and you're going to tow it or something, or you just want to move it around your shop, there's this valve here. It's actually called a freewheeling valve, and what you're going to do is turn this clockwise, and that will actually open up some little check valves in the hydro so that you can move it. If you're going to tow it, you want to do that. When you're done, you just turn it back, and that's going to allow it to the hydro to engage. To set the mower deck, there's this little knob here, and what you're going to do, they've got actually the little instructions there on how to do it, but there's a jam nut here that you're going to loosen and then move this up and down to set the height of the mower deck. This does have a 48-inch mower deck, and the drive belt is an M82718, and that's from the PTO clutch in the front to the deck. There's a deck belt that then goes between the 3 deck pulleys, and that's an M41668. And it took me a little while to figure out what the correct belt was for this, but that's something that, if you go to John Deere parts, it's not an easy find. The tires on this tractor are 23 10-5-12s turf tires, and all of the tires are in good condition, and the rims are in really good condition because when I owned this tractor, I sandblasted them and painted them 2 or 3 coats of paint. So the overall tractor, as far as paint, is in very good condition. It's something that, like I say, I did take the time and I repainted the whole tractor and put new decals on the hood, and everywhere else the seat is in good condition. The mower deck, the bearings in the deck are in good condition. They've been replaced, and there are no grease zerks on the mower deck bearings. These are sealed bearings, so you don't have to worry about greasing those. What you're going to be doing, though, is you need to grease in the front here. On these spindles here, there's a grease zerk, and then down on the wheel itself, there's another grease zerk, and you'll be greasing those. I do it, people think it's like once a season. I do that 2 or 3 times. Okay, the tractor doesn't have power steering, so I like to keep those greased as much as possible. The tractor does have dual hydraulics, where there are 2 sets of couplers here, and when you're looking at the hydraulic levers here, this one is going to be for the mower deck. It operates, they call it a rock shaft cylinder. Basically, that's a cylinder that's going to lift and lower your mower deck. The inside one here is for where you have like a front blade or something, snowblower, where you want to lift it up and lower it. This also has what they call a float position, where when you put it in this position, it releases pressure on the hydraulic cylinder, so it's going to allow whatever you have up front to just follow the contour of whatever you're doing. But that's kind of the reason I bought this tractor, is when I found out it had dual hydraulics. I actually then built a loader, which was my first Buford bucket, and the dual hydraulics, work good on this tractor. So, if you want to put anything else on here, not a big problem. The tractor does have an electric PTO, which is power takeoff, and this is in the front of the tractor. Excuse me. I did rebuild this and put a new bearing in the clutch. This pulley, when the engine is idling, does not spin. The bearing in here is for when the engine is running, but the clutch isn't engaged. When you engage the clutch, it's going to actually take the bearing out of the equation. So if you have a tractor that's idling and this PTO is making a lot of noise, you turn it on and the noise goes away. The problem is this bearing, and it's like a $10 item, and I did replace it and put a brand new bearing in here. Okay, the tractor starts up pretty good, and I did give it a little bit of choke. If it sets for a while, you might have to choke it. When you turn it on, that little ticking noise you hear is the fuel pump. So that's a good way to tell that the fuel pump is working. Just by turning it on, it'll always turn the fuel pump on. Okay, the PTO switch here is going to turn on the mower deck. You need to have that in the off position to be able to start the tractor. There also is a little switch here inside this slot where the hydrostat lever is. And occasionally I've had where that switch is goes bad, and you can just take your finger and stick it in here, and that will operate that switch. So if you're having a problem, it won't crank or won't do anything, first thing I try is this switch. Make sure your PTO is off, and after that it's just a matter of, it might be in the ignition switch. This one does have a brand new switch. The hydrostat is forward and reverse, and you don't really need to use your brakes. If you're going down a hill and you want to slow down, just bring the hydrostat back, and you can actually nudge it a little bit into the reverse side, and what that's going to do is actually act like brakes. So if you have a hydrostat, it's something that you really don't very often need to use the brakes. And if you're using the brakes, it's because you probably got yourself in trouble. I've always been able to do most anything I needed coming down a hill, and just be careful, don't get going too fast. Light switches here. All of the lights on the tractor work. This is the choke. And the hour meter I put on new, and it didn't have one when I bought it. I put it on new, and it's now saying there's 2,996 hours. And somebody left the ignition on. There's no way that this tractor would have that many hours. But it's just a matter of, when you turn the ignition on, you're turning on the voltage to the hour meter, and so it'll just keep ticking away if you leave it on. Looks like somebody forgot to turn off the ignition switch in the winter, and came back in the spring, and that's why it's got so many hours. But the engine runs good. I really am surprised. I really like this engine. When I was using it with a loader, it had a lot of power. I then went to 318s, which had the 2-cylinder Onan. It's an 18-horse tractor, but I really think that this Kohler had more power than the Onans. This tractor did come with a Kohler, and later on John Deere upgraded it to have the Onan B43G engine. And that's where, when you look at your serial number, there'll be a serial break where they quit using the Kohler engine and went to the Onan. That's why I always like to get the serial number on tractors, so I pretty well can tell what some of the features are on it. And sometimes they're just things, when you're looking at parts, they'll have serial number breaks too. So it's always, something I really like to have. Okay, you can still get the technical manual for this tractor, and you can get it from John Deere. It's a TM-1208, and they want I guess $100 is their normal price, I believe. But you'll see a lot of places on eBay where somebody's trying to sell these. You can still get the operator manual, which is OMM 85149. And again, you can still get it from John Deere, or you can just find something on eBay. A lot of people have these and are selling them for very reasonable prices. I also have a 54-inch front blade that is going to be for sale. It's not included with the tractor, but if you're interested in having a front blade, this will be for sale. The lug tires that I have for sale are 23-10-5-12 tires, and I have put fluid in the tires. Whenever you have equipment like a front blade, you need to counterbalance it for the weight, and you also want additional traction. So I do have some rear tires that are bar lug, and I also have a set of front tires bar lug, and it's the tire and the rim and everything will be included. So if you're interested in this tractor, you can send me an email at jd.jake@att.net. And I have the tractor for sale. I'm asking $800, and it's in good condition. It's got a mower deck in good condition, and I think that's a fair price. But if you have any other offers, just let me know and I'll think about it. I also have a front blade and bar lug tires that I'm going to sell for a little extra.